Hey everyone, this is Hurricane Hal with our Friday tropical weather update. Unlike any other, we could potentially be looking at 2 hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico at the same time next week, doing something that we call the Fujiwhara Dance. I'm not making this up. Let's go straight away to our sand map this morning and talk about what's happening in these active tropics. I'm on the beach here in beautiful Galveston, Texas, in front of the iconic and elegant Hotel Galvez, and we have our sand map here this morning. We're going to talk about 2 systems. We have Tropical Depression 13. So this is a tropical depression. I'm going to use seaweed to show the location of our storms. Tropical Depression 13 this morning is centered about 300 miles east of the northern Leeward Islands. It's moving at a pretty good clip. It's moving to the west-northwest at 21 miles an hour. Now, conditions have not been ideal for this. The low-level circulation and the mid-level circulation have not been lining up. There's been wind shear and dry air, so it still has not reached the 40-mile-an-hour threshold to become a tropical storm. However, it is forecast to strengthen, and as it moves here to the west, we've been talking about this track that would likely take it north of Puerto Rico. And, we're going to have to look at some land interaction here. It's going to pass either near or north of Puerto Rico and then move over towards Hispaniola. Overnight, the tracks have actually moved a little bit to the south. So in this range in here, but as it approaches Puerto Rico, conditions are not yet great for development. But as it gets close and passes near or north of Hispaniola, environmental conditions as far as wind shear should drop down, the air should be more moist, and the conditions when it really passes here near Hispaniola over through Cuba, this is Saturday into Sunday, conditions will be more favorable for tropical development. So for example, when it gets here near the northern coast of Hispaniola, pretty good conditions for development as far as low wind shear and moisture air. It's going to be a question of the track. Does the track take it over land or keep it out over water? Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, and Cuba all are very mountainous, and that really disrupts the development of tropical cyclones. So it's really going to be a question Saturday into Sunday of the track. If it stays to the north, it could potentially become a hurricane as it tracks towards the southern Bahamas. If it stays to the south and interacts with land, it would probably be much weaker and probably be a tropical storm. We do have this, though, coming in here either near or just north of the islands, getting into, say, Monday night, and then we're going to have to watch our friends in South Florida, not out of the woods yet. It could potentially be a hurricane in South Florida or the Florida Keys. Right now, the best forecast from the National Hurricane Center has it as a strong tropical storm approaching the Florida Keys, getting into, say, early Tuesday, and then bringing it out here into the Gulf Coast, where essentially the Hurricane Center says that it could form into a hurricane getting into next week. So we're going to have to watch this. And actually getting into, say, the day, Monday probably crossing the Florida Keys, getting into the day on Tuesday, and keep this position in mind. This is the best forecast we have getting into, say, Tuesday morning at 2 o'clock in the morning local time. We would have a Category 1 hurricane in the eastern Gulf. The track and intensity forecast somewhat uncertain right now, again, depending on the land interaction, but keep this position in mind. We're going to come back to it a little bit later, but that's the best forecast that the Hurricane Center has for 2 a.m. on Tuesday morning. Again, it could change a little bit, but the Hurricane Center does have this as a Cat 1 hurricane with 75-mile-an-hour winds southwest of Tampa on Tuesday morning. Let's talk now about Tropical Depression 14. And so this also has maximum sustained winds around 35 miles an hour. It's centered near the Nicaragua and Honduras border. Here's some big changes to this since last night. It did not track over Central America and over land as much as previously forecast. It's expected for the most part to stay out over open water and actually track towards the Yucatan Peninsula and come up there by Saturday night. Conditions look favorable for strengthening, and we're looking at potentially a strong tropical storm landfall getting into Saturday night and then moving out into the Gulf of Mexico as we get into Sunday. This is where it gets really interesting. And keep in mind that the Yucatan Peninsula does not really have high mountains. So if Tropical Depression 14 becomes a tropical storm, tracks over the northeastern corner of the Yucatan Peninsula, it probably will still maintain a lot of strength. The National Hurricane Center now has this developing into a hurricane in the central Gulf of Mexico getting into Sunday night. That's a big change from last night, and that has to do with less interaction here over land, So originally we thought that it might spend some time here over Central America, and we also, with a farther south track, it would have tracked more over the Yucatan Peninsula. Now the best track has moved it a little bit farther north and east. It's going to have less land time over Central America and probably less crossing time over the Yucatan Peninsula. Conditions are fairly favorable over the next 3 days for development, and so the Hurricane Center has this also as a Cat 1 hurricane getting into Sunday night and Monday. And so we talked before about the position of these storms at 2 a.m. on Tuesday. The storm to the east could be off the west coast of Florida, and the storm to the west could be here maybe south of Lake Charles. At the same time, this would be, say, Monday night into early Tuesday morning, we could potentially see 2 hurricanes in the Gulf at the same time. That's never happened on record before. We haven't seen that before, and this becomes very interesting. I've had some questions come in. Becky from Bolivar Peninsula asked me, what happens if we have 2 hurricanes in the Gulf? Can they join forces? Can they team up and become one megastorm? Most likely not, because of the circulation around these systems. So keep in mind, in the northern hemisphere, hurricanes, the rotation of the winds around the storms is counterclockwise, right? So if we draw a counterclockwise flow around these storms, we're bringing the wind in here from the north on the east storm, and the winds are coming around from the south on the west storm. And so there's some point in the middle where the winds are kind of bypassing each other. But these storms can feel each other. And there's something called the Fujiwhara Effect. This is from a Japanese scientist who discovered this after World War I. And what happens is 2 hurricanes will actually feel and sense each other, and they will try to rotate around a common point, or a central point. So let me put a point out here, a piece of driftwood, say south of the Mississippi River, or maybe south of Gulfport, Mississippi. There's our central point right there. These storms will try to, in a sense, rotate around a central point, not unlike if you're square dancing and you link arms with your partner and you're both rotating around a central point. If that were to happen, the storm on the right is already moving faster than the one on the left, but that could serve to accelerate the storm to the east and decelerate the storm to the west. Right now, it looked like the storm to the west would make an earlier landfall, but it's not out of the question that if the Fujiwara effect came into play, it would accelerate the storm to the east, decelerate the storm to the west, and it could, in a sense, look like they're coordinating simultaneous landfalls on Tuesday night. That's, again, there's a lot of uncertainty here, but it's not outside the question that these storms could make landfalls at the same time on Tuesday night. Where will it affect? I would say anywhere, especially Galveston, Port Arthur, Beaumont, over to Lake Charles. Stay aware for the storm, be prepared for it. We could be looking at anywhere from a tropical storm to potentially even a Cat 1 or Cat 2 hurricane. Storm to the east, I would say anywhere from Gulfport, Biloxi over through Panama City. We really need to be on the lookout. But potentially we could have 2 landfalling hurricanes both on Tuesday night. And as they kind of do this Fujiwara dance, decelerating the one on the west, accelerating the one on the east, they could, in theory, make landfalls at the same time in 2 different Gulf Coast communities. We've never even seen 2 hurricanes at the same time in the Gulf of Mexico, let alone 2 simultaneous landfalls. And again, this Fujiwara effect, you can look it up online. It's really interesting. It's pretty rare. It's when 2 hurricanes get within about 800 miles of each other. They can feel the effects of the other one. If one was really incredibly large and intense and the other one was small, the smaller one would actually kind of get sucked in and gobbled up by the bigger one. In this case, we're talking about 2 fairly equal storms. We don't think one would gobble up the other one. We think that it could affect the tracking and the speed of them as they kind of do this dance around a central point. A little bit crazy, but hey, the year's 2020, right? We learn to expect the unexpected. Quite a bit of uncertainty with the track and intensity of these storms. Again, anywhere Texas coast, southwest Louisiana from TD 14. I would say Gulfport, Mobile, Pensacola, Panama City from TD 13. Be on the lookout. This is early next week. Big impacts. Friends in South Florida, if TD 13 stays north of the island, it's going to have some favorable conditions for developing getting into Sunday and Monday. Not out of the woods that we could not see a hurricane landfall in South Florida getting into, say, late Monday. So again, that has to do with a lot of that interaction with land. A lot of uncertainty with both systems. We'll keep you updated right here on the CNC channels. We like to be right here on the coastal communities, working with the locals, working with the data, and really looking at the impacts. Always very interested in the wind and flood impacts. This is Hurricane Hal, everyone, signing off. I'm going to keep you updated frequently on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter throughout this tropical season. Have a safe Friday, everyone, and I'll be in touch.